Alright, Dragon is spawning in 30 seconds. Let's get some vision control and we'll fight front to back, and hopefully my team peels the enemy divers. Hopefully we pull through. As an ADC, it can feel like that's your only strategy going into a game. You're so team reliant that you have no choice but to follow the same scripted patterns every game, right? Well, no, and that's what we're here to cover today. Even as an ADC, using vision, wave knowledge, and positioning, you can instantly end games by breaking the script and causing chaos on the Rift. Alright, let's get into some ways of how you can do so. For our first example, Lucian and his team are setting up to capture the Infernal Dragon spawning shortly. The enemy team, not wanting that to happen, decide to face check together and a fight breaks out. Although Lucian doesn't have the most appealing scoreline, he is pretty farmed, so he does quite a bit of work and achieves a clean ace. Instead of going to Dragon, he obviously pushes bot lane instead and takes the inhib. Although they don't manage to take the mid one as well, it was still a pretty solid push regardless, and he takes some jungle camps and a wave before setting up a base. After purchasing quite a few items, he begins pathing toward mid. We see Malphite pushing forward to get vision for his team, and eventually Lucian pans his camera over to see his teammates starting the Baron. Based on what you know and getting a feel for how the game has been going, what do you think Lucian should look to do to ensure that his team doesn't throw and he wins the game? If you thought about sprinting it down mid, you're 100% correct. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, some of his teammates were randomly hitting Baron when he and Karma weren't even there. That's not a good sign that they know what they're doing, and trusting them to do a Baron dance properly is suspect at best. The enemy comp, although behind, is also very annoying at stopping Baron. LeBlanc and Kayn have great pressure over the wall, and Malphite with Samira engaged while they start to get low is incredibly threatening. Since Lucian's team has no tank and only Nidalee for sustain at Baron, they could prove to be very dicey quite quickly. Beyond that, the enemy team allowed a super minion wave to get fairly close to their base. They were likely getting vision with Malphite before sending him to defend with his teleport. This means that if someone gets in there and pushes right now, threatening to end is a really big problem for the enemy team. Lucian abuses the fact that they're all committed to the typical Baron dance around the Raptors and just sneaks around to begin hard pushing. This immediately causes a lot of chaos for the enemy team. Notice how panicked their retreat is. Lucian's team capitalizes on this and are picking off the Samira, lagging behind in the retreat. At this point, Lucian doesn't even have to do anything anymore. He pulls out the classic zoning ultimate, and the game is over anyway since the push was just so devastating. The main idea here is that putting people into uncomfortable situations is better than doing something they've experienced before. Yes, Lucian and his team had a good lead, so the Baron dance is likely to work. That being said, the enemy team has done that Baron dance hundreds of times in their league careers. They may be behind, but they probably know how to play that situation to attempt to come back with some percentage of success. Instead, by causing chaos, Lucian basically said, hey, you guys have no voice comms in this game, and I'm making a game-ending play. React appropriately as a team in 3 seconds, or lose the game. And yeah, the results speak for themselves. There was no Baron risk required to win here. Alright, let's move on to our next example. In this game, Tristana is side laning for a bit in bot lane. Meanwhile, we see her Jax and Pantheon die to a collapse in top from the Twitch, Darius, and Lux. Knowing that it's unlikely Miss Fortune has assistance, Triss jumps on her, easily taking her out, and proceeds to push the tower to try and cross-map an objective. After taking the tower, Tristana does us a favor and presses tab. Based on what we've seen so far and the information presented here, what is a likely assumption that you could make, and then based on that assumption, what is a play that you could do to snowball the game out of control? The assumption that we're looking for is that the enemy bot side jungle is not warded. We just saw 3 members of the enemy team topside, which means that they weren't in their bot side for a while at least. Not only that, but when pressing tab, we see that Lux is not only still in the top river, but she also hasn't placed any of her wards yet. With that information, we need to pay attention to the fact that Dragon was spawning in 25 seconds. Although they would be a bit late, this does give the enemy team time to get there by the time it spawns. If Tristana, Annie, and Shaco waited at the spawn, the enemy team could all arrive to force a 4v3 and likely win the Dragon fight. That being said, the issue is that they have to get there in the first place. To contest that Dragon, they have to face check multiple areas of their jungle. Since we saw Lux alone in the river, it means that their collapse is likely going to be uncoordinated, and they're a team filled with squishy champions. All Tristana has to do is sit in a bush and wait. Annie and Shaco follow suit, and eventually Twitch ends up face checking along with Lux on the top side. Just like that, Tristana and her team not only secure the Dragon, but those 2 picks allow them to push even further and solidify their lead within the game. Now, keep in mind that this was possible as an ADC, mostly because of the current damage levels in the game. Even ADCs instantly pop people if they're allowed to auto 4 or 5 times, which is guaranteed when someone is face checking you. But let's say you were in the exact same situation as perhaps a Jinx or a Senna. You can't really instantly pop anyone with those types of ADCs, so the play would remain the same, but to try and coordinate with Shaco and Annie in the same bush. If they don't listen and just go to Dragon, then you would have to fall back as well. All we want to say is that you should really be aware of the damage that your champion is capable of instantly doing when going for brush camps. In this game, it was very clear Tristana could instantly pop anyone who came close to her. Alright, on to our final example. We have a game from a Jhin struggling against an AoE team comp. Twitch and Fiddlesticks are a nightmare to deal with this game, since Jhin's entire team is melee and keep getting obliterated by the teamfight combo. At this point, they've lost so many fights this way that the enemy team manages to get very early Dragon Soul, making the game even harder than it was before. Luckily, a bit later as the enemy team sets up for Baron, they overextend a bit and Jax gets a clutch flank, setting up a triple stun. The fight ends up going favorably and Jhin and his team get a Baron as their reward. Alright, as Jhin paths mid to get ready to siege with his team, with the information that you know, what do you think his best course of action is to instantly win this game? Well, hopefully you remember that the enemy team has the better teamfighting comp. Just because they won the previous fight doesn't erase the fact that one decent engage from Twitch and Fiddlesticks obliterates the 4 melees on Jhin's team, especially with the Infernal Soul. By walking to siege into mid, you're giving them multiple ables to engage. The reason that Baron fight went so well is because the enemy team overextended. They can't overextend when defending their base, since this time it'll be Jhin and friends walking into them instead. Hopefully you also notice that Jhin's team is a 1-3-1 comp with great side laners in Fizz and Jax. Unfortunately, this Fizz has been pretty attached to Jhin in the mid lane most of the game. Telling your teammates to do something is usually a futile effort, since if they're not already doing it, then they probably wouldn't do it well anyway. As always, take control of the situation and don't walk into what the enemy team wants you to walk into. Instead, Jhin goes top and begins to pressure the enemy team. The enemy tries to engage in mid, but Fizz easily gets away. As they back off and disappear from the map, Leona is spam pinging to fall back, but why would Jhin do that? Look at the vision he has to work with here. There is no way they're collapsing this way without Jhin knowing exactly how they're doing so. So, Jhin walks into the jungle to bait the enemy team. If you were watching the minimap, you'll have seen that the enemy team entered completely uncoordinated and scattered. So, Jhin basically begins saying, hey, I'm right here, I'm an ADC, come get me. And he positions just in range to where they're getting baited, but all the while he's leading them to where Jhin wants to fight, not where they want to fight. Let's pause on this frame. Look at their positioning compared to Jhin and his team. Remember, the enemy team loves coordinated engages where they get a ton of AoE off successfully. Mundo and Fizz, on the other hand, love spread out and chaotic fights. The game was over before this fight even began. Of course, now Jhin and his team can easily push to end the game. So those were just a few examples of what you can potentially do even as an ADC. You have more control over the game than you realize as long as you're looking for the opening that the enemy team is giving you. Low elo players are constantly making vision, wave, or positioning mistakes that you can easily abuse. And even if you sometimes throw a game this way, that's totally fine. Having tricks up your sleeve to solo win games is better than doing the same thing over and over and expecting things to go any differently. Before we continue, we just want to make sure you all know where this guide came from. Skillcapped. It's the best place to be if you actually want to improve at League of Legends. We have the best and the most LoL guides on the internet that really do work. The best part is that you don't have to take our word for it. If you don't climb 5 divisions while using Skillcapped, you can claim a refund. So give it a shot and get the rank you've always wanted for Season 11. Check us out after this. In any case, that wraps up this guide. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.